So, welcome back to another episode. Today we have Stephen G. Post, PhD, and he is the director of the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at the Renaissance School of Medicine at Stony Brook University. He founded the Institute for Research on Pure Unlimited Love with initial support from his mentor, Sir John Templeton. And today we're going to be diving in to this idea of pure unlimited love. So, welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Melissa, for having me. It's a delight.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Your work sits at a really interesting intersection. You've spent decades studying something that most people think of as emotional or even intangible, but you've actually researched it scientifically: love, compassion, giving. And what stood out to me, oh, excuse me. And what stood out to me is that you're not just talking about it philosophically, you're showing how it actually impacts the body and the brain and how we experience our lives. So
Mm.
I'd love to start here. You've done more than 40 years of research. And what do you think that people fundamentally misunderstand about love and its role that it plays in our lives?
Well, that's a good place to start. What is love, essentially? And I do have a settled definition that I don't change much over the years. And here it goes. When the security and the well-being of another is as real to you or meaningful to you as your own, and sometimes even more so, you love that person.
Mhm.
So I can say that again if you want.
Yeah.
When the security and the well being of another is as real or meaningful to you as your own,
Mm,
you love that person. And that
beautiful.
handles whether you're at Starbucks having a cup of coffee with an old friend,
Hmm.
whether you're looking over the crib of a grandchild, whether you're in the hospice, spending time with an old friend who's passing away, whatever it could be. There's no Latin, there's no Greek, there's no Latin and different languages of ancient times. It's just sort of everyday, straightforward, uh, and easy to understand.
And so is that just a feeling or is it something deeper than that?
Well, it is deeper uh, than than cognitive, but it is at an emotional level. Although there's another form of love that is not the same thing as uh, human love, if you will. It's the kind of spiritual love that sort of invades us, and many people have written about that. So it's a difficult question. Let me just go forward. If you ask me, how is love expressed?
Hmm.
So that's mainly what I'm interested in these days.
Hmm.
So I have the wheel of love in the book, and love can be expressed in so many different ways depending on people's needs. So sometimes, if people are suffering, they need compassion, which is that sort of emotional empathy and presence in the context of suffering and with the intention of alleviating the source of that suffering. So that's what we try to do when we educate medical students here at Stony Brook.
Hmm.
There's also carefrontation is a form of love. That's a word I take from the great psychiatrist M. Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled many years ago. And essentially, he wanted a word that was better than confrontation, which is so adversarial.
Hmm.
It's something that was more lasting and meaningful and deeper and hopeful. So he coined the word carefrontation and wrote a best-selling book about it. And he was, of course, a psychiatrist, so he had to be carefrontational with patients. And I think that it's a good word. You don't want to be harsh. You don't want to lose the other person, but you want them to see where they can manifest their true nature and where they can really stay true to themselves.
Hmm.
So that's carefrontation. But there's also forgiveness. If somebody has made a dreadful potentially life-ending medical error, they may come in here and they may be in tears and ready to quit their profession, whether they're a nurse or a doctor, and um, and they need forgiveness. They need self-forgiveness, and they need forgiveness generally. And so I like to quote to them. This does not happen very often, but sometimes it does. Over the last 40 years, once or twice anyway. Uh, those who make no mistakes make nothing, which is a quote from Martin Luther King. So
Mm.
I also think mirth is an expression of love. So these are all like spokes on the wheel. Love is in the at the hub of the wheel, and then there are these spokes going on in all different directions. And creativity is a spoke of the wheel. So a lot of people are creative for really loving purposes. Uplifting, not derisive, but meaningful, healthy, fun mirth is a form of love, just like there was the laughing Buddha. And Dostoevsky wrote The Idiot about a Christ figure that was just kind of nutsy. And so I think that there are many different forms that love takes, and that's really what positive psychology is about.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like you're like when most of the general world thinks of love, right? We're thinking of like how we love our children or how we love our partner or our parents or something. And it's very, very one noted, right? There's this one note to that. And you've broadened this definition. I mean, not most people wouldn't say, oh, creativity or mirth or love,
Right.
or definitely I could see compassion being, a part of that. But those other pieces, are like with these spokes on the wheel give us a really broad and like yummy view, right? It gives us something to
Oh,
say, oh, there's so many more ways. And so your book, Pure Unlimited Love, you're talking about all of these pieces in that, right? Like this well-being of another becomes as meaningful as your own, but it comes in all of these different ways.
yeah, just depending on what people need. So I come to work in the morning. I tend to meditate for at least a half an hour or so, and I rise up fairly early.
Hmm.
And I get to a point where I'm thinking about the people I know I'm going to meet over the course of the day. Sometimes their names are in my journal book.
Hmm.
And I know that somebody may have lost a child to an addiction, and I know they need a lot of compassion. Or somebody may have uh, something else going on in their life, and I try to anticipate and encounter them that day in front of me with the intention of loving them in one of these ways. Sometimes they need simple helping behavior. Sometimes they need listening, loyalty. If they've been betrayed, or they feel betrayed by a spouse or a friend or um, a colleague, then I need to tell them that I'm a very loyal, sticking with it type guy, and that helps them. So
Hmm.
you want to think about love not just as some big, huge abstraction. Um, Now, of course, it's important because when you're manifesting love in all these ways, you want to have that affect within you. You want to be drawing on the love within you, and that is an emotional thing, but it's not in and of itself easy to express.
Yeah, it sounds very much like the pieces, like the things that you're saying, like when you meditate and you're thinking about the people during the day, then it's like you're taking that love into an action during the
Yes.
day. So it becomes instead of it being I love you, a noun, it becomes a verb. I am doing something that is,
Oh,
showing my love.
yeah, yeah. I'm listening. So I knew Cicely Saunders very well, the foundress of the hospice movement in London. And she had been very busy for many years founding St. Christopher's Hospice. And she said when she was 83 that she still went in the morning and cleaned bedpans because she'd once been a nurse before she became a physician. And then she would sit on the end of beds and she would just ask people who were dying
Mm.
what was the most meaningful and wonderful thing in their lives. And she would just listen. She wouldn't interrupt them.
Yeah.
And she said that love is in listening. And it is in listening. It's in loyalty. It's in creativity. I mean, look at Chagall. Look at these great artists, musicians, who really manifest love through their creativity. It's not always the case that creativity is loving, but an awful lot of it is.
Mhm.
So that's my theory. It's, love is the center, but the problem is that human nature is a bit of an untrustworthy device.
Yeah. That I agree very much so. And so I love that you take a more scientific approach to this idea because you're not just talking about this in some sort of abstract way. You've actually been researching this for years. And what are some of the biggest findings that you've found with this research? What was there anything that was surprising to you or anything that you were like, oh, I never expected that?
You know, uh, Most of these things I anticipate and draw hypotheses around them. When I came here to Stony Brook from Cleveland, I was at Case Western for a long time, and that was the year 2008. There was an economic downturn, and a lot of people in America were volunteering. Frankly, they'd lost their jobs. And so one of the great managed care systems gave me a call, United Health, and they wanted to have some suggestions about a national survey on volunteerism and how it made people feel.
Hmm.
So it turns out that this is now in early 2010, looking back at 2009, about 41% of American adults were volunteering. How much, you might ask? About um, 2 hours a week on average, which is about 100 hours a year.
Hmm.
And then we asked questions of them, psychological questions. So, how did this make you feel? Did it make you feel happier? 90% said happier. I can actually, you don't have the book there, do you?
I have the PDF. I don't have the actual book.
Well, you'll see at the end of chapter one, something like 80% say it makes it easier for them to deal with challenges. They're more resilient. And it goes on and on and
That's
on.
huge. That's a
It
big
is,
number.
it
Yeah.
is a big number.
90% happier, 80% easier to deal with challenges.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not a transactional kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
just the internal dynamics of being in touch with what I sometimes call the care and connection system and getting freed up from the I don't do nothing for nothing mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's the first path in your book, right? You have seven paths in the
yeah,
pure unlimited love. There are seven paths that you speak about
right.
in the chapters of the book, and the first one is called "May You Give and Glow,"
Yes,
and that's about this, right? This the science of giving.
yes, the science of giving, and it goes through many, many different fields and areas, even looks at recovery rates across most fields of medicine. Um, so whether it's pain, whether it's um, a heart disease, lots of different things. And it gets very particular, but it points out that when people who have been ill are able, God willing, to help others to some reasonable degree that they're comfortable with, they usually get benefits. They feel a helper's high. They heal a little bit quicker because it affects their immunology. It affects their stress levels. It lowers their stress hormones. Cortisol, in particular, is lowered, and so it's a good thing for them. And that means it's good to be good, and that science says it's so. But the second chapter is "May you heal with kindness,"
Yeah.
because this is the center we run here for uh, medical humanities, compassionate care, and bioethics. And the students, who are great students, they really go over wildly for the compassionate care piece of it, because that's what
Mm.
they want to be. They want to be practitioners who engage with compassion and empathy and so forth. So we do a lot of different things. We're ranked number 4 in the country of all the medical schools uh, for this kind of work. And our students get great residencies because they're familiar with all these things. There are techniques involved, there are trainings involved, and I think that we're doing really well with it. But it's been interesting. Kindness is,
Let's talk a little bit about more about that, like these techniques of kindness and how that works and how that shows up.
well, there are a lot of different ways. I mean, some of them are more sociological. For example, many papers have been published in, say, the last 15 years, pointing out that medical students, when they get out in the actual units, in the floors, in their uh, um, first clinical experiences, which go on typically for about a year or so, uh, they they actually lose empathy, and that's kind of disheartening because and a lot of it is just because they're overwhelmed. Uh,
Hmm.
they uh, they feel tremendously pressured, and they see a lot of things that are not so great. So what we do is we have reflection rounds in every, what they call these clerkship experiences. The students in all medical schools have clerkships. They have clerkships in pediatrics and surgery and adult medicine, you name it. So they'll spend 4 to 6 weeks in each of these fields, uh, and they'll be active with patients, and they'll be observing and listening and studying. That's how they get ready for their boards. So what we do is we let them come out of their clerkships, uh, and spend about an hour with someone who's not responsible for their evaluation, their grading, or anything like that. Someone like me, but we have about 25 people like me who are good at this and have an ability to listen. And we spend the first half hour asking the students, what did you see that was really inspiring for you? So maybe they saw or they heard somebody make the most beautiful comment to a patient that was completely uplifting. But then we shift it, spend a half an hour on the more um, hurtful kinds of things they might have seen that leave them unhappy with their environment. Not that that's common, but there's usually another half hour of discussion about someone who said the wrong thing at the wrong time with the wrong tone, who were short tempered with the patient, and so forth. That's universal. The world's been burning since the world's been turning,
Yeah.
whether you're in New York and Texas. And I suppose that by letting them talk about those experiences with some granularity, some depth, it helps them process it. And then we spend a few minutes asking them, so how did you manage that situation? Did you just take it internally and say, that's not how I want to practice medicine? A lot of people are happy with that. But then a certain percentage of them have very diplomatically, say, gone to their team and told them what they felt and experienced as a medical student when they saw this not so great standard, and that they probably uh, thought about it all night. Maybe they were in the parking lot crying on the horn of their car. Who knows?
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but uh, but we give them that opportunity to be speaking in confidentiality about the ups and downs of their clinical experiences from a humanistic and an emotional point of view. And and that's why while most medical schools do have that decline in the clerkship years uh, in empathy and compassion, we actually don't have that. We've measured it, we've published it in the great journal Academic Psychiatry. And it's because we're letting these young people express their agency, not just leave it inside, but actually express it with one another and be agents of change and feel that they can make a difference in their environment. Again, diplomatically, sometimes indirectly, sometimes directly, but it gives them a feeling that, they can make a difference. And when you do that with people, they don't get burned out.
And how does that show up in the day to day with their interactions with patients, and how does that change how the patient's experience?
Well, it improves it always. Whenever the students or any clinicians can feel that their concerns are being taken seriously, um, it encourages them uh, to be the kinds of people they want to be, to practice with their moral integrity, with their professional identity, not to let that be stepped on by the negative influences in their environment.
It's really beautiful. So kindness, do you guys have specific protocols with this, this way of kindness that you actually like teach or show or when it comes to working directly with people that are in the
Yeah,
hospitals?
yeah. So we do verbatim, which means they do that in social work too. They don't do it in medical schools, but we
Mm,
so verbatim. So let's just say you're a young student, and for the first time you're in OB/GYN, and you're interacting with a patient. So you're expected to just, in the case of one meaningful interaction, try to write down almost like a one-act play, of course, in total confidentiality, almost like a one-act play, what you said, what the patient said, and back and forth and back and forth. Usually comes out to about a page or so. And then you meet with your small group, maybe 6 or 7 people, and you go through what was said. They actually are reading that page as well as you, and they might ask you, so why did you say this and not that? Or was this really the right thing to say? And it makes you really second guess yourself and think a lot about what you say, what you don't say, why, and when. Was it kind? Was it not so kind? Could you have
mm,
said it better?
mm.
And that's very effective. It's very, very effective. It's very proven. We haven't done original research on it, but it's very proven in schools of social work and also in clinical pastoral care.
So it seems like it's like almost a practice of learning to be kind or learning the wording or the things that you
Yeah.
go in and you do these things. You take a trial, then you go to your group and you share, and then you get to ask the questions and say, okay, and then that way you can rewire and you can go back in differently the next time.
Yeah, and they might write down a few notes based on their experience. They don't have much time during the day, but at
Yeah,
night, when they have more time, if they have more time, they'll write something that's a little more significant. It's kind of like a very brief one-act play. And then, when you read these things verbatim and aloud with your peers, they pick things up that you're missing.
mm,
And that's
yeah.
and that's one way to really make people more thoughtful about their verbal communication.
And how does that translate into, does that help, change the way that the experience for them, that keeps them from having the burnout or losing the
Sure it
empathy
does.
or, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it
yeah.
keeps them learning a skill set,
Hmm.
becoming more refined. Because, a lot of people, clinicians, nurses, all kinds of folks in healthcare, they just don't think that much about what they're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be totally rude. It's not like, you know, apocalyptic, but
Yeah.
but you can have people who are just insensitive,
Yeah.
and it's hard for them to achieve that sensibility independently. So when they're working with a team, with a group of peers, that tends to be successful.
Yeah. So my audience here are a bunch of high achievers, CEOs, people that are out there like really, living the stressed out life. How does this apply like to, obviously because you're doctors and the things are very stressed out. How does doing something like this apply to what people can use in the world to bring more kindness into the world?
Well, verbatim exercises are helpful in all fields,
Mm,
not just medicine, but they're helpful for people in uh, uh, clergy people, people doing pastoral care, people in law. It's just very important to have that sense of control and care in how you express yourself. So
And
it's
so
better to,
why do you think that this is something that's not well implemented or done in so many areas? Like you're implementing it in your hospital, but I can assume that not all the hospitals have that, and we're not doing this on a regular basis. You have the scientific backing behind it. Like what needs to happen to be able to get this out into the world more? This pure unlimited love and these different 7 steps to have this be something that proliferates through our society.
I like that word proliferate. I think it's happening. Uh, there are a lot of different places. We were the first ones to have a center devoted to the study of compassionate care, but now at Stanford, at UC, San Diego, at various other places, you see these programs cropping up. There are not so many programs, new programs in so-called bioethics, which is about sort of quandaries. Do you use a feeding tube on a 90-year-old guy with terminal dementia or not?
Mhm.
The answer is probably not. Uh, but the point is that you want to really train people psychologically and emotionally to connect with their patients and with one another. So that thing over my head here, do you see
Yep.
that picture? Okay, we'll use that for a minute. So the
For
the
those of
red,
you on the podcast, you're not going to be able to see this, but
well, the red circle is the medical humanities. We have students reading a lot of literature and poetry by patients about their experiences.
Mm.
And some of those things are very, very moving, like when breath becomes air. There's so many that are really great. Uh, and uh, and we do that across a whole lot of disease conditions, and so that the students have a sensibility for their patients. And then the blue circle, the next ring in these circles, is the empathic virtues. So when you become sensitive and aware of some of these illness experiences, people tend to become more empathic. They become more humble. They're not just running in there arrogantly, as sometimes occurs, um, but they listen more attentively. So it helps them. And then in the green circle, that's where you actually are in the clinical setting. And there you're really practicing compassionate care. So that's what we try to do. And I think it's helpful for anybody, whether you're raising a family, looking after your kids, doing anything at all in life.
Mhm.
That's a pretty good model. And we have published pretty widely on that.
Yeah.
It's successful in that sense. But then the third path, follow your callings. And for the entrepreneurs and the business people in your world, there's a lot of entrepreneurial stuff going on in Austin.
Mhm.
For sure, following your callings is important. And what is a calling? It's not something mystical necessarily. It can just be having a feeling that you're doing the thing that you should be doing with your gifts and your talents.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah. I run into a lot of people that followed the money, meaning that they got super successful. They did something that I knew would make them money, but then they come to a point in their life, they're in their 50s or 60s or, sometimes in their 40s, and they're like, well, I followed the success and the money, but I'm not fulfilled, right? There's no fulfillment here, and then they feel this disconnection in their lives and with their communities and with their families and everything. And it's because I believe what you're saying here. I don't believe they followed their calling. They followed what they were told they should do to be able to make the money that they wanted to, and then all of a sudden they wake up one day and they're like, "Who am I? What is my calling?"
Yeah, so there's a chapter on how do you discover your calling
Hmm.
and how do you stick with it. Now, I'm one of the lucky ones. I've been following my calling since I was about 15.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be a teacher. I was a teacher in Concord, New Hampshire when I was in high school, and I continued doing that over the course of my life. Not always in medical schools, but medical schools are very interesting because you're also training people in professional identity and professional values and virtues. But you can be you can be distracted from your callings because of a little more money,
Mm-hmm.
or you can be distracted by a little better institution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Stony Brook's a great school, but it's not known like Harvard and Yale or even UT.
Right.
Although I don't mean that. I love the University of Texas. In fact,
Yeah.
I love Austin. Uh, I've been on Fifth Street and different places there over the years. I mean, obviously, Willie Nelson has a calling. He's a very gifted musician, and if at all possible in life, you want to blur the line between work and play,
Mm-hmm.
and so that when you go to work, I guess that you're probably like this quite a bit. You go to work and you feel joyful and connected and fulfilled. Money will take care of itself. I don't make hundreds of thousands of dollars by any means, but I make plenty of money. And it's always been a secondary consideration. It's a byproduct of my work on following the path of love.
Hmm.
And it doesn't always happen quickly or automatically, but you don't want to obsess about it. Although things have gotten difficult and bills are harder to pay these days, but still you want to maintain your integrity and fulfill your calling. So both Picasso and Shakespeare argued that the purpose of life is to discover your gifts and your talents, cultivate them, and then use them to benefit others.
I would say that it's very true. I think, I think the word purpose gets thrown around a little too much. I think purpose is not the word, but when you say calling, it means something different because I think our purpose just here is just to be love, to find that and to be that. But our calling is these gifts and these things that allow us to experience life in a certain way and then that feeds into ourselves and into those around us. And I would say, when I talk about we live in a field of uh, pure love. That's what it is. It is divine love. It is that's the field that exists, that unified field that we live in. And this idea of this pure, unlimited love that you're speaking of in this book is this idea of that. How does that move through us? And one of those ways is through the calling. And another way that you talk about in your book is you talk about the gift of nature. And I think that
Yeah.
I think nature to me is such a powerful aphrodisiac and experience of love and all those things. And so, tell us a little bit more about the gift of
Well,
nature and how that plays into
well,
pure
well,
love.
that's the sixth path. It
Hmm.
says, may you raise kind children. May you know the one mind or
Hmm.
consciousness. May you uh, may you appreciate the gift of nature. And I think that that's so important because if you go to any meditational center, you'll find that there are wind chimes, there is flowing water through some sort of bamboo device. There's something about being close to nature
Hmm.
that gets you away from the busyness of everyday life. You're no longer running around from point A to point B. You're really immersed in the garden, if you will. And that's a great way to meditate, to be mindful, to pray if you pray. It's important. So for me, nature is really pivotal. And I think it's unfortunate nowadays that too many people, not just young people, but too many people generally, don't get to benefit from the almost mystical energy of nature. I mean, in our psychiatric units, uh, some clinicians actually play around with the language of nature deficit disorder.
Oh,
And I think that there is some of that. A lot of times people will get so locked up to being online, to AI and whatever, that they lose any sense of the gift of nature. And
oh yeah.
that's a very sad state of affairs because it's not healthy. It will damage them mentally and physically.
I think we're seeing that in our children. Children used to go out and play all the time outside, and now they're stuck on computers in the house or they're, iPads or tablets, and they're not out in nature as much. And you can see a definite difference
Yes.
in the children and the connections and things because they're not connected as connected. We are nature. It is part of our biology. We are a part of that. And we know for a fact, like you can do the science behind just what happens when you put your feet in the ground and you connect to nature or you hug a tree. It's not, we could say hug tree huggers and it kind of be funny, but it actually has there's there's actually science behind what happens when you hug a tree or put your feet in dirt.
Yeah. When you think about, say, Francis of Assisi, these are the great models of pure love in a sense. They were very
Hmm.
much in tune with the natural world.
Hmm.
And so nowadays, with AI, uh, you have some of these companies, I won't mention them online here, but some of them being sued successfully by families whose children have killed themselves.
Hmm.
And the thing you have to realize about AI, it has no love.
Yes.
It is without love. And so therefore, if I was to tell you what I think AI is like, I would go back to those movies from about 2000, uh, The Terminator. Those Terminators have no empathy, they have no concern with what they do. And so what's happening with these young people is they are asking the AI for practical advice on how to kill themselves. And they're getting it.
Mm.
And that's why a court of law uh, decided about 2 months ago that Meta and I believe Google were both guilty of neglect. And so they're being sued big time. There's a psychiatrist at UCSF who's studying what he calls um, AI insanity. It's not artificial intelligence, it's artificial insanity. Writing
Yeah.
some very thoughtful things about it because their minds, their brains are so locked in to this stuff. And they're
Yeah.
even having relationships with AI, of a not a central nature, but of a romantic
Yeah.
falsification. So where does this end? I think that we have to just recognize this is not taking us anyplace good or healthy, and that our children, especially when they're young and vulnerable, need to get into nature, need to get away from um, these devices, just to whatever extent possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe nature is definitely the answer to that for sure.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when you have a couple of little kids with their iPads in front of them, and they're at a restaurant, and you've got mom and dad, and then you've got grandma or grandpa or both at the table as well. There can be a lot of really wonderful stuff going on in terms of intergenerational dialogue, but they won't be a part of it because they're just locked into their devices. And I think it's a very sad story. It attributes, and there is a good science about this now, it attributes quite a bit to the anxiety of the younger generation, the anxiety, the suicide, because they're not in real relationships.
Well, and I think that starts all with our parents, right? Like one of the things that you talk about in your book, that's the sixth path, I believe, or wait, which one is it? It is
May
the for
you
the children, the fourth path, right? May
may
you
you
raise
raise
kind
kind children.
children.
Yeah,
And so it becomes something where it starts with the parents, it starts with the community, it starts with that. We've it's been shown even at such a young age, right, that we can
sure.
clearly show the natural tendencies for children to be a certain way, but then all of a sudden something happens and that gets cut off.
Well, they do have a natural empathy. We actually funded some studies at Yale, in the Yale Child Studies Center about empathy in toddlers. And they have quite a bit of it. They're not just nasty swashbucklers,
Yeah.
but there's something that goes on if they're in an adversarial environment. They sometimes talk about ACEs or adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
And those are not determinative necessarily over the course of a lifetime. But if you have a very difficult situation and your parents are not good role models and they're pushing the wrong buttons, they're going against your natural tendency, and that
Yeah.
can be hard to overcome.
Well, and I can speak to this directly. I was a 10 out of 10 on the ACE score by the age of 10. And I was still probably one of the, like I grew up and I was very kind. I was things, but my challenge where it came in was, I I used to lash out at boys when I was young, but then when I got into my college years in my early 20s, my issue was I got deep into like drugs and into things that were unsafe for myself. But the one thing from the people that knew me in my 20s back when I was drug trafficking that say that happened, that still know me now all these years later with the work that I do, they said yes, and Melissa, but there was always something lying underneath, that you always had this care and this love and this empathy for people that
Okay.
was there, right? So even though I had such a high ACE score, there was still something that allowed me to hold on to. I was the international drug trafficker that made sure that anybody that was addicted didn't get drugs. Like I was that
Right.
person.
Okay.
So there
Well,
was a piece of that. But yeah, I can see how, when you're talking about the ACE score and talking about children is very directly related to the experiences that they have. And yet there's also something else there.
yeah, so there's a lot to be said about that. It's a room for a whole book in itself. But, you know,
Hmm.
I think that there are a lot of healthy tips about how to raise a kind children. A child. For example, have a little statement of the 4 or 5 values that you agree to as a family: kindness, forgiveness, whatever they might be. And when there's a kind of an unfortunate moment in behavior, instead of getting lost in screaming, bring everybody together around this statement. It could be tacked onto the refrigerator and just talk about it at that level.
Mm.
Uh, so that helps. And there are lots to be said about small, important techniques for raising kind children. And
Yeah.
the final one, the seventh path,
Hmm.
may you honor the spirit of freedom.
Mm.
And that's so basic. Every great spiritual and moral tradition uh, connects freedom with something like the positive version of the golden rule. The Upanishads do that. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And it's not just don't do unto others what you would not have them do unto you, because that doesn't require much.
Hmm.
I mean, I can go home tonight, and I guess if I haven't kicked anybody mercilessly, I can feel good about myself. If I haven't screamed bloody murder as some innocent student, I'd probably lose my job. But uh, I'm supposed to be able to feel good. It doesn't work that way. Really, the minimalism of do no harm is important, but it's not fulfilling. What's
No.
fulfilling is
Yeah.
to use your moral imagination, your spirituality, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or as they would have you do unto them, in another phrase.
And so what exactly does it mean? Do you mean in your book by freedom?
Well, freedom means more than being liberated from constraints. Uh, that's important, but it means much more than that. It means using your freedom, honoring your freedom through something like the golden rule, through living a meaningful, uh, exemplary, generous, caring life. Following your callings is a good way to do it.
Hmm.
So freedom, I don't think of freedom just in terms of a dog biting through a leash. Uh, I think of freedom in terms of how we use our consciousness to benefit others and ourselves as well. So that's what the Russians, like Dostoevsky, all the great novelists, made that point, that freedom is a responsibility. I don't,
Hmm.
it's not something that um, you you force yourself to accept. It's a duty. It's something that is within the human consciousness, something that is within the human mind, the human heart. The Hindus are good because they say that we have within us a soul. I believe that. And the soul is a small drop, if you will, of the supreme mind, supreme being, the supreme consciousness that is beyond time and place, and that is really responsible for the existence of the whole universe. And
Hmm.
so we have a little bit of that within us. And the interesting thing is that the three features of the Supreme Being are number one, kindness or love, number two, freedom, and number three, creativity. So if you live a life consistent with freedom, creativity, and love, you're doing yourself a service because you're living the way you should be living.
Yeah. Wow, that's really beautiful. That is that, and that is honestly true freedom.
That
That's
is
where
true
you're,
freedom.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's true
yeah,
freedom. You're not held back from anything at that point.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have that freedom, even if you're jailed, like
Hmm.
Martin Luther King or Bonhoeffer or some of these Nelson Mandela,
Yeah.
frankly, you can overcome it. It's not a good thing to be jailed, but obviously, but on the other hand, it's not a perfect world, and people do things that are very dastardly at times, and so you have to maintain your integrity in
Mm.
jail. That's why Martin Luther King wrote The Strength to Love, which is a collection of his best sermons while he was jailed in Birmingham. And it's a beautiful book, and it's called The Strength to Love. So he was using that as an opportunity to test his own internal spiritual convictions and
Mhm.
capacities. It's a beautiful book. Um, One of the greats ever, actually. So I think that there is a kind of freedom in being a person of pure unlimited love.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. So your book is framed in seven paths, and the seven paths are actually mantras. And I'm just going to share them because I think that
Okay.
like reading each one of them is really powerful. And I want everyone to just, but as I say them, I want you to just say it out loud with me because this is just really beautiful when we think of like this pure unlimited love and how do we share with the world. And a mantra is something you can repeat every day, that you can repeat every moment, that allows you to, and it fills your system. Voice, right? I speak about like voice and the command of the voice and what it does. It goes all the way down to your DNA. So it's may you give and glow. May you heal with kindness. May you follow your callings. May you raise kind children. May you know the one mind. May you cherish the gift of nature. May you honor the spirit of freedom. I think you should just chat those down. You'll find them down below in the show notes, along with a link to this book and to find out more about Stephen, because this is just when you start to bring this, we're offering, this pathway to well-being and inner peace and kindness. And that's what I really know that Stephen's work is all about and the research that he's been doing for all of these years. And I think it's really powerful. So, Stephen, I ask everybody one question on our podcast, and this podcast is called High on Life. And so, what does high on life mean to you?
It means, it doesn't necessarily mean happiness. It means inner peace. You'll
Mm,
notice the subtitle is Seven Paths to Inner Peace.
yes.
I've kind of tired out of the happiness literature. I mean, happiness is kind of superficial. It means many, many different things. Dan Goldman at Harvard describes it in strictly hedonic terms. How much can you munch? It doesn't have any higher depth, call it a flow or meaning over the course of a lifetime. So I like to use the language of inner peace.
And you've hit the nail on the head, my friend.
Yeah.
I
And there's
really,
not enough
truly,
of it. There's
I
not
truly
enough of
agree
it.
with you
Yeah. I mean,
100%.
so many people are just, they're so caught up in their anxiety. I mean, you go to the psychiatric emergency units around the hospitals in Long Island, and I guarantee you, it's astonishing to see this condition that many people are in, especially over the weekends. And it wasn't, maybe it was that way once upon a time, but I don't think it was this bad.
Mm.
And the things that people are doing to each other, it's so destructive and so self-destructive. So we need inner peace. And if you can achieve inner peace, through following the wheel of love on these seven paths, you will inevitably, as a byproduct or a side effect, you will be happy. You don't have to worry about happiness if you have inner peace.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
I think you're right. I 100% agree. Because I think happiness is something that like, I went from high on drugs to high on life. I think happiness is a external thing that we chase out there that can come and go depending on what the circumstances is. But when you have full pure alignment and you have this internal peace, that literally creates everything. And then that happiness exudes from you, and it's a whole other thing.
Yes.
But you could actually have inner peace and not be happy at times because an emotion flows up and down. But the inner peace is the stability that no matter what chaotic experience or thing that's happening
Oh,
in your life around you, you still have this inner peace. Because there's going to be times where the shit hits the fan and stuff
yeah.
goes crazy and you're not going to be happy, but that doesn't shake that inner peace.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't shake that inner peace. And I just want to grab something up here. So one of the one of the quotes that I think is worth noticing here from Albert Camus, the great writer. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. That's on what page is that? I can't even see. It's page 126. But that's
Mm,
really what we're talking about is an inner peace.
yeah,
And it's only with inner peace that you begin to see outer peace in the world. Nobody ever got to a peaceful world without first looking at themselves, doing self-assessment, developing their spirituality so they don't react
yeah,
others and even and some of the unfortunate activities and words that people are capable of. This can be very abusive. I mean, Billy Joel said the world's been burning since the world's been turning. But
yeah.
you know, you need to have that inner peace. And that's why for me, I do this spiritual exercise in the mornings early on. I get up really early. I usually get up about 5:30, drives my family nuts. Uh, but I meditate. I'm mindful and I pray and I reflect intentionally and envision the interactions I'm going to have over now. It doesn't mean, and so I come to work and I'm usually a very good leader, been very
Hmm.
successful. But there was a morning when the guy in front of me, for no reason whatsoever, stopped at the yellow light. I mean, I'm not too good with yellow lights. I tend to go through them oftentimes. And this was really not even a yellow light. It was just barely a yellow light. So he stopped cold. And it meant that I had another 5 minutes before I could get to my office. And so I fell full chested on my horn. I didn't yell out an expletive, but I felt like it. And
Mm,
so those things are going to happen to you over the course of the day. And I don't think anybody is perfect, no matter what our spiritual discipline and practice might be. We're still
no,
capable of flying off the handle.
we're not here to be perfect.
Right. So I'm
Yeah.
into the spirituality of imperfection.
Hmm.
Been married for 43 years. You've got to have a love for imperfection
Yeah.
to be married that long. And loyalty, there's so little loyalty in people's relationships. I see them breaking up so quickly. And I just fear this because it has an emotional toll. And this is great. I'm reading this great book called Heartbreak, A Personal and Scientific Journey by Florence Williams, best-selling author. Great book. It
Hmm.
really is about how that kind of emotional damage literally affects the heart. So the broken heart is not just metaphorical.
Yeah.
There's a
It's
real
literal.
bi there's
Yeah.
real biology behind it. And so
Yep.
you're struggling with a broken heart, and that can kill you. There's a
Mm.
Japanese word for it. And we have cardiologists here at Stony Brook who actually have subspecialties in broken heart syndrome. And I'm sure there are people at UT Southwestern and so forth who do that as well.
Yeah.
But this is part of the problem. We don't have loyalty and we don't have confidence in our relationships. So people are panicky and they're anxious. and we have to get away from that. And one way to do that is to just, discover within ourselves something we can always rely on no matter what the circumstances.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I think that is the mic drop. Perfect, the perfect absolute ending to this show today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Stephen. You go to the show notes to grab Pure Unlimited Love and to find out more about all of the amazing research that Stephen has been doing around love. Thank you. Any last words today?
It's a pleasure. Well, I'll tell you, Eleanor Roosevelt, an old timer, long since deceased, uh, said something that I often quote. Um, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And so
Mm,
my guess is that the very fact that you have an audience listening to of such an interesting show as yours is, Melissa, is testimony to the fact that they are dreamers. And
yes,
the world needs dreamers. You have to believe in your dreams, stick with them, and you will do well.
awesome. Beautiful. Thank you all so much. Bye.
Blessings. Thanks. See you then.
See you later. Bye.